Hi, welcome back to Cambridge Inside Out. I'm Judy Nathans.
And over here, I'm Robert Winters.
Yes, you are. Okay.
Yeah.
So maybe we should go back to the city council meeting of the 11th, which was,
Yeah.
yeah,
There was one of the big items that was actually drawing a lot of people to that particular
yes,
meeting was there
yes,
were some proposals from the city manager,
on his
basically, and
agenda, right?
the public works department and others
Yes,
for some extensions of timelines and things relating to the development of some of
bike
these
lane, right,
separated bike lane
right.
infrastructure, because the requirements of the existing bicycle safety ordinance,
Mhm.
right? Always sounds like Boston Symphony Orchestra or something to me, or is it cycling safety ordinance, which would be
Just
combined
cycling
sewer
safety ordinance.
overflow.
Yeah, all
But
right, yeah,
anyway, whatever your acronym happens to be, that
right.
that unless they come up with a plan for, or either start actually doing some much more elaborate changes in the roadway, they would
Mhm.
be obligated basically to go with the plastic posts, the quick build, they call them quick build separated bicycle infrastructure,
Right.
which and just sort of do that. So now, because there is, at least the way I heard it all, because there, especially in the vicinity of Porter Square, there are some perhaps better possibilities for how to do this in a way that's much more acceptable to more people,
Hmm.
possibly even preserving some parking,
Hmm.
but also, doing it in conjunction with the removal of the catenaries, the MBTA
Well, that was a big issue during this
electric
meeting, like,
supply.
how can you count on the MBTA to do it when you need to do it? And did
Yeah.
Toner, was it Paul Toner? It said we can go up there and just take some clippings
He
and
said, if you
take them.
give us some bolt cutters, we'll be
Right,
up.
we
We'll
can,
be happy to
yeah.
do it. But it's a
Carlone and
little,
I, right.
it's a little bit more complicated than
I know,
that.
I would
But
think so.
yeah,
Might get
but
electrocuted or something. Yeah.
yeah, but from my point of view, it to me, it's just obvious that if you do have a better plan, you shouldn't just do a crappy plan just so you can tear it up to put the better one in. If you have to wait a few months or a year in order to do the better one, you should wait that year. I mean, I don't think that's the end of the world. But because of the way the ordinance is written, that is not an option unless you make an amendment to the ordinance. But we have that little dilemma that nobody, there are a lot of people signed a paper saying thou shalt not change the ordinance. So
Right.
so they did actually, I believe the city council was set to, to approve some modifications. Um, and again, I think was it Councilor Zondervan was pointing out that the requirements of the ordinance are
Right.
breathing down our necks, so there can be no
Right.
delay.
Oh,
But
right. Him and also, yeah, him and, yeah, I guess basically him. Yeah.
right, but Councilor Carlone did choose to exercise his charter right
Yep.
to delay it, which in this case was 2 weeks because of the holiday,
Right.
which really doesn't change things, because then
Right.
they'll just have to act on it then. But I think Dennis Carlone was kind of pretty right on about the idea, though, that why would you want to invest a lot of money and do a lot of changes just waiting for the MBTA to take down some of the
Right.
the electric bus
Right.
lines, and then that, with that, providing a much better way to do a better project. It just,
Right.
I mean, the urban design architecture kind of guy that he is, I think
Yeah.
he was just talking sense.
Yeah.
But we have the politics of bike lanes and the perceived immediacy of you got to do everything immediately or else everybody's going to die. And that's, kind of a dishonest way of looking at the world, but that's kind of the political hand that's been dealt.
Yeah.
So anyway, that'll come up, for action this coming Monday, and
Oh, right.
presumably
They have to
they'll
deal with it again. Yeah.
yeah. I mean, there was some numbers, rather extraordinary numbers, being tossed around by Young Kim and a few others about
Uh-huh.
$55 million total for doing this
Oh, so did that,
project.
that did not come from the report itself?
It was in the report,
Yeah,
right?
right.
But there was
So,
no action made because of the,
right, but I'm just saying it would cover about 2 miles. And they were saying,
right.
but so
Yeah.
then they asked Kathy Watkins, what does that cover? And I guess 14 million of that would be for Harvard Square
Yeah,
changes, which might be
yeah,
permanent. And then the rest is paving, pedestrian ramps, removal of the median. Is that
right.
really that? Well, I could see that creating new crosswalks and new traffic signals. So there's a
Right.
lot
I mean,
going in
yeah.
there.
So the notion, I mean, I certainly hope people didn't walk away from that meeting thinking that it was $55 million to
Just
put
to
in
put down
plastic
some paint.
posts,
Right, exactly.
paint and
Oh,
posts,
that's right. That's what it could
right.
look like. Yeah, right.
Right. But if you are going to spend serious bucks, you ought to do the job in a serious, comprehensive way. And
Well,
I
the
think
question is, would
usually,
it be permanent? Would some of this stuff remain, or would you have to dig it up again? I guess
you
that's,
know,
yeah,
in my view,
yeah,
do what you're going to do, but in a more permanent way. And if it takes a little
yeah.
longer, that's really what you ought to be doing. It
Okay.
just,
No,
to
you're
me, it
right.
just
Yeah,
seems
yeah, yeah, yeah.
pretty obvious. So anyway, so that was one of the big items I think that was kind of floating around at that particular
Mhm,
meeting, right?
mhm,
Is that
mhm.
fair to say? What was some other
I
items
like,
of,
well, I like the policy order that was proposed by Lana Mallon about the having a designated person for people who are going through the permit process for natural disasters, i.e. like a fire in your house. And that, I think that was important because having been experienced that myself or through someone else, it can be a nightmare to just have different, plumbing this way. So to have one point, I think that was the policy order, to have a point person that could expedite some of this for a hardship, not hardship, but you know what I mean. If you had a
yeah,
fire, something where it's a need, you need to get moving on it. You can't just
well, I
delay.
think
Yeah,
I would actually add to that and say that
yeah, yeah,
you can focus on the specifics of having like a fire that,
right.
and then somebody's got to navigate the system in order to, expedite basically rebuilding and doing all of that. But
Yeah,
the
right.
truth is that the cities in some ways it's efficient, it's run efficiently, but in other ways, especially when it comes to building and,
Yes,
inspectional services, whatever, it can be
it
really
is.
nightmarish.
And
So
I
it's,
know, I know, and people have experienced it, and it's been because there's state codes, and then there's one hand telling you, well, this is the way it's supposed to be, and then you find out it's another way. Someone needs to
yeah,
be
I think that's
knowledgeable
sort
about
of
all
it.
that.
I think
Yeah,
it's sort of there ought to be a general recognition
yeah,
that we need to make it easier for people who need to
right,
do complicated things to
right,
navigate the system
right,
without losing their minds or walking away.
right. I mean, they're trying to
You know?
provide housing, or they're trying to, at least recover their law. I
Right.
mean, yeah, yeah,
And if there is an opportunity, like if a building disappeared, but then you're going to rebuild it, if there is a relatively quick way to get some input for how to do it better. I mean,
hmm,
sometimes a person who's rebuilding a house, for example, they're going to build a more energy efficient house. They'll probably be putting in solar panels on the roof.
maybe
I
if they
think
can,
people,
yeah, they want to do all
yeah, I mean, I think there are a lot of incentives and reasons why those better things would probably happen naturally anyway, because they're just good choices. You're not going to rebuild an energy inefficient, crummy shack. You're gonna build the best building you can,
Well, it depends
uh,
on, well, yeah, it
unless
depends
unless
though.
it breaks the bank. But
Yeah, and
as
it
long as
depends
it's not going to break
if
the bank.
if
Yeah,
it's for your own domicile, people will tend to do that. But if you're an absentee landlord or something and you just want to get your rentals back up, you may
right.
not do that.
But
So I don't know.
there are certain circumstances I've seen over the years where if there may be a regulatory advantage to rebuilding a property exactly within the footprint of the existing building, even if that was not really the ideal way to situate the building on the lot,
Mhm.
right? So, you'd certainly want to have at least a little flexibility, and, hopefully the regulations should permit enough flexibility without, allowing some, you know, m- madman developer to just basically go lot line to lot line all around just
Well,
because they can.
some will do that as long as it doesn't require certain variances, and if they're allowed to do it as a right, they'll do that. So
Yeah.
that's a whole other issue. But
Yeah.
anyway,
Actually,
um,
one of the more entertaining things that happened at that last city council meeting
yeah,
for me was
yeah.
there was a city council order. I forget who, I think it was Councilor Nolan and somebody maybe introduced it. It
Which
was one
one?
that had to do with idling.
Oh,
It was like an anti-idling
oh,
idling
this is like
law.
the BB&N crowd, right? Wasn't it something to do with BB&N
no,
parents
no,
waiting for
no.
their kids? You sure about that?
No. It was something else. It was, and I'm kind of having a hard time sort of finding it here right now. But basically, there's a law that exists on the books in New York City
Yeah,
that
5
basically
minutes.
gives people a right to um, basically make money. They get to split the fine if they catch
Oh,
somebody, breaking
oh,
an
like a
anti-idling
bounty.
law,
Oh,
like a
right.
bounty.
Yes,
And
yes.
apparently there are some people who
Yeah.
basically do this for a living now
Oh
in New
my
York,
God.
is looking for people who are violating it and then, acting like a bounty hunter, to
Ugh,
go and make some money off it. And I thought to myself, boy,
That,
that might
that's
actually lead to some rather curious conflicts.
that's terrible. That's kind of like a lighter version of the abortion law in Texas.
Yeah,
Right.
exactly. Yeah.
Oof.
So I think there seemed to be a little bit of pushback from the city council.
But
And
I do think it did relate to the BB&N issue because parents wait for their kids and there was complaints about that from neighborhoods. I'm pretty
yeah,
sure that
actually, I
that's
was just seeing
connected.
here
Yeah.
it was Councilor Azim who was the one who
What makes sense. Yeah.
exercised his charter right after,
Uh-huh.
as part of the discussion
Oh,
that was actually
because of
going
the
on.
bounty portion part
Yeah,
of it.
I think it
Yeah.
was actually Councilor Toner is the one who pulled the item for discussion. It was order number 2 of the
Okay.
last council meeting,
Oh, all right. I'll have
to
to
do
look at
that.
that.
Yeah.
All right.
So,
So
anyway,
that's charter right? You think?
yeah, so
That
that
one
that
too?
comes
Oh, okay.
back, and I imagine they're going to amend that basically to kind of soften the incentive to become a bounty hunter
Yeah, I
in
think
some way.
people felt that
Yeah,
way. You're right.
yeah, I kind of felt so as well. So actually, I'm going to say, can I say one quick thing on Councilor Zine?
Sure.
There was a little tweet he put out a couple days ago.
He likes to put out lots of tweets.
He certainly does, but he put out a tweet
Their own little Trump.
maybe 2 days ago that basically it sounded like real whining that somehow all the regulations and all the advantages are all stacked in such a way that
Against.
only people over 65 get
Oh,
any kind of benefits from the city and nobody
oh my God.
younger. And
Oh
I
my
just
God.
replied to that and
Ooh,
well, I think this is a sadly misinformed perspective. I wasn't going
wow.
to get into an argument,
Okay.
but
What
some of
was he
his
referring to? What was he
I don't know
referring
whether it was talking about. I mean,
parking
yeah, there is a
permits
no,
and
no,
things
no.
like
There's
that?
you've heard it many times over.
What?
There's this sort of this perception that people who are older, they own all the wealth, they own all the
Oh, right.
housing,
They
they
own the
have all the
property. Yeah.
rights, and
I don't
if
own
they
anything.
want to have a car and do everything with a car, that
Just
somehow the
own a
city
car.
is going to
Yeah.
bend over backwards to
Yeah.
allow,
Right. They get a
allow them
residential permit
freedoms,
and all
and
that. Yeah.
that
Yeah.
somehow the city is out there waging war against younger people, and that's crap. I mean, that is
Yeah.
total crap. And I said so, and I thought,
Right.
okay, well, this is going to be a real argument. I'm going to get it. Some of the Azim
Yeah.
acolytes are going to start yelling at me. How dare you?
Did
They're
that
going to say,
happen?
they'll say, oh, no, Councilor Azim deleted his tweet. I think
Whoa.
he thought better of it and
Yeah.
realized that he's basically declaring war against older people, and that wasn't
I think
politically
he's
very
learning
smart.
what it means to be a public official. I mean,
Yeah, I
Trump
think,
never learned, but you just can't just blurt things out that you like. You have to think of the
I know,
consequences
but
because you're in a different position
and
now.
now I will speak as sort of probably the chief advocate for proportional representations in the election, but
Uh-huh.
I will readily acknowledge that one of the worst aspects of PR as practice in places like Cambridge is that it gives every incentive for
Yeah.
an elected official to sing to their own
Right.
choir.
Because they don't need many votes. They
Right.
really
So
don't.
so
Yeah.
if you got a bunch of people who are upset because yes,
Mhm.
it's hard for a younger person
Mhm.
to find housing that's affordable to them,
Yeah. Right.
especially if they're, not seeking quote affordable housing, but if they're just looking for reasonable
Yeah.
rent, it's tough.
Mhm.
It's right now we're in a pretty tough period, so
It's not
if you
just
got
us, it's around the country.
it's
It's
all
an
around the
issue that's,
country.
yeah.
Yeah,
Right.
it absolutely is. So, but the thing is, just basically making this out as though somehow
Mhm.
your generation
Yeah.
is somehow has the worst of all possible historical generations,
Yeah.
like
Yeah.
completely negating the fact that there was a depression where a lot of people had it a
Yeah.
lot harder,
Mhm.
once upon a time. But, again, getting back to the proportional representation aspect of things. And again, I'm not here to
Mm,
sort of to
I
disproportional
know.
representation, but
But that
to
is
me,
one aspect of it that I don't
right.
like.
I mean, if you have certain counselors who all they want to do is sort of raise issues either
Appeal
about
to their base.
race or
Yeah,
gender
right.
or age or
Yeah,
whatever,
yeah,
as opposed to being a more comprehensive elected official,
right.
comprehensive elected official who's
Yeah.
trying to represent everybody to some degree, then you run into these kinds of, silo politics.
Mhm.
And I don't like it at all.
Yeah.
It really irritates me greatly.
Yeah, no, I
I mean,
agree.
honestly, if you think about it, even, some of the bike lane discussion falls into that category too.
Oh,
If
absolutely. Are you
you've
kidding me?
decided that
Yeah.
a certain brand of bicycle advocate
Yep.
is pivotal to your election, and then you basically play to that, even if
Yep.
you might have a greater wisdom based on discussion with your colleagues and
Well,
other
like
city
the whole
staff.
the Fresh Pond Golf Course fiasco, that whole
Yeah,
thing was
there's
a similar kind of thing. It's like, who are these people using our this space that could be used for other
right.
things, and who are they? I mean, they're the proper,
I know.
ridiculous.
The fresh pond one, that issue, and again, and I'm not saying there aren't other ways of thinking about the open space, and
Yeah, but that
whatever.
in particular, you could not, it is regulated by
Yeah.
lots of other things. And in fact, the fact that they even got a golf course was questionable, but that was back in the 30s, right? So,
Well, right,
yeah,
but
yeah,
what was happening there? I mean, it was
yeah,
just screaming right through that entire
yeah.
issue.
It
Was
was
this notion
not having
about,
the information either. It
those
just
it's
simply, yeah.
those aristocratic older people who
You
have
can
this
afford to go play golf.
privilege
Yeah,
about
yeah.
playing golf, and they don't a lot of the people who were making that point had no idea who goes golfing there.
Right. And
You know,
also, so what? And it makes money. It pays for itself too.
I know,
And
I
so
know.
what if other people use it? It's a public course and a
Yeah,
lot of people
yeah,
like it. Leave it
yeah,
alone,
yeah.
So
No, and I think ultimately that's kind of where it's
that's what
headed,
happened.
right?
Yeah, yeah,
But
yeah.
there's still that incentive for elected
Mhm.
officials to sort of,
Yeah.
play into their narrow constituencies, and I
Well,
kind of
that probably happens a lot of places too, even,
I
but
agree, but if you are a district-based council who represents an entire district, then you have to think about everybody in your district. You're not just going to sort of narrow into one ideological
right.
contingent in
But we
there.
don't have district base. You're right. So we have
No,
cities that they should be,
yeah. I
right.
mean,
Yeah,
it's
yeah,
like, I never thought I'd see the day where I even started to, at least scratch
yeah.
my head a little bit about the
PR.
downside
Yeah,
of PR. But
yeah.
when I see
Yeah.
people playing into that style of politics, it really worries me. I think it's time for everybody to kind of get a
Wait,
little bit.
aren't there, there are places that have city managers and
City manager former,
but also have district representatives do not have a PR system of voting. Right?
absolutely right. In fact,
Yeah, that could be a change.
city manager and town manager form of government are actually more common than any other
Exactly.
thing else across the
That's right.
country. No, across the country.
Really? Okay.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah,
Big cities tend to have directly elected mayors and,
that's true.
acting as chief executive
I mean,
officers of the city.
Brookline has a town manager, I believe.
Right.
Brookline. Yeah.
And I think there's a reason why we've sort of stably
Mhm,
come to that point, because it's a system that tends to work reasonably well.
mhm.
you know but the larger a city gets, the more there's kind of a populism thing that takes over, which can often lead to there being a movement for things like directly elected mayors with authority.
Are we that large, really? I don't know.
I don't think we're really large enough that maybe that would actually be worth going toward. But ultimately, if that was a proposal that came out of, for example, a charter review, you'd have a real argument about it. And there
Yeah.
would probably be a lot of people who just by default would say, well, why don't we have a direct elected mayor? They wouldn't even think about what the downsides
And
of that
those
are.
60% they said that are renters, are they going to be here in the next few years? I mean, it just,
Well,
there's a, I don't know,
yeah. Anyway, we'll
a
see.
lot to think about. Yeah.
Definitely.
Oh boy.
So,
Okay.
actually, I want to say just a few things because it is April 19th.
Yeah.
And if
Yeah,
I might,
let's talk about
if
that.
I might just sort of wander off into a somewhat less political realm, one of
Yes.
the nice things about living in
New England.
where we are
Yeah.
is that we actually are so surrounded by history.
History.
In
Okay.
Cambridge, if a person was a fan of, strange and ironic as it is, the United States Army was formed initially in Cambridge, the Washington
Really?
Elm at this Cambridge Common. So you
No,
can,
I didn't know
yes,
that.
yeah, that's where,
Not that that's not what you're showing here.
that's where
but
General Washington
Yeah.
basically took the commission to become
So
commander of the United States Army
in Cambridge.
in Cambridge. Yeah.
Wow.
So you could, it's one of the joys of living here
Yeah.
is that you are surrounded by this, but not far from Cambridge, you can,
Mhm.
as Paul Revere and William Dawes knows,
Yeah.
you could
Take a horse and
you could
go
take a
ride
horse as they do in the reenactments. And
or
I
bike.
think,
You could
yeah,
bike.
and they actually had reenactments in Lexington Town Green yesterday, I
Have
believe.
you ever seen those? I've never seen.
I've gone out to Concord
Yeah.
for the reenactments over by the Old
Okay.
North Bridge, but I actually didn't stay around too much for the reenactment, but I did the pancake breakfast where everybody was dressed as either British militiamen, US militiamen, or British soldiers. And we're all just eating pancakes together. It was really kind of fun.
That's got to be pre-COVID, right?
Oh yeah, this was many years ago.
Yeah, I was going to say.
So we went out, it was Renee's birthday, so we actually went out for a walk around
Yay.
Concord. And and I actually find great inspiration going to these. And I have to also just say parenthetically that as we were going along some of the trails, when you saw the yellow and blue flags of Ukraine, you couldn't help but draw parallels between the American Revolution, and fighting in, a greater force, for independence. You just feel it. It's just, it really runs through you when you're there. And I always find the embattled farmer symbolism of the statue just beautiful. As the old Concord hymn reads, by the rude bridge that arched the flood, their flag to April's breeze unfurled, where once the embattled farmer stood and fired the shot heard round the world. Yeah. But, it's one of those things I would encourage people in Cambridge to get the hell out of Cambridge sometimes and go to places like it's not far, in a half hour you can be there. And just a sort of a panoramic view of the Old North Bridge with there. And I always probably by the inscriptions from the language used at, like, for example, the grave of the British soldiers, especially that chilling line where their English mother made her moan, and this is where the British soldiers died, but also it's not just about history. I did this rather crude map today just to illustrate how.
I didn't
remember
see that.
we actually was it a year ago we did on my birthday?
2020, I think it was.
Might have even been. Yeah. So we
was,
did a walk along the old railroad line, which is now it's called the Reformatory Trail, which should actually take you out to the Great Meadows National Wildlife Refuge, which is a beautiful place. But what's really kind of interesting, and I didn't realize until the other day, how incredibly close that is to the Old North Bridge. So we actually went along there and then cruised. There's a little place called the Dyke Trail or the Edge Trail that actually takes you right over to the Old North Bridge, and then you can come back along the old railroad grade. One place we did not go to was actually Authors Ridge, where some of the great Concord authors, are buried. But you can actually make a very nice loop. That's
a nice, We did. Was it as hot? Remember how hot it was the day?
It was pretty warm that day when we did it, but we started at the eastern end of Bedford, and we hiked into Concord to go to the refuge.
Nice.
This one here, we actually started at the refuge, and then we went over to the Old North Bridge, and it's a very nice thing. And if anybody wants, take me along, I'll go. I'll give a narrated tour any old time. It's really great. But there are so many places in and around Cambridge where you can really, really take in the history of it all. I saw somebody posted a photo, kind of a nice photo of the USS Constitution down at the old Charlestown Navy Yard, moored there. And it's another one of those. That's a boat that they'll take out into Boston Harbor for a turnaround on July 4th, but it's a beautiful thing to see.
It's stationed there now, right? Can you go on it?
I think they've resumed
started tours, right?
Yeah, I believe so. But where the photo was taken, because I've led walks there, is exactly the spot where Paul Revere landed. And there are usually markers that actually show this is where the boat they came across from downtown Boston, and they got the signal from the lantern up at the Old North Church, one if I land, two if I see,
Is it kind of
all
like
of
Russia invading Ukraine? It was like the British coming and taking
well,
away our independence.
we were sort of trying to declare our independence, which is a little bit
Yeah,
different than having our
true.
independence taken away. But
Away from us, right? Already
yeah,
having a.
yeah.
Mm,
But as I say, it's there's barely a part of Cambridge you can walk in where there wasn't something extraordinary has happened historically. It's really one of the
mhm.
sweetest things about living here.
Yeah,
I
like
think,
Fort Washington right near me. Yeah.
yeah, exactly. You can actually
Yeah.
still see some of the mounds that were there
Yeah.
for the protection of the sweeping view of the Charles River, which is
Yeah.
now blocked by MIT
Yeah.
buildings and other things. But
That's
once
true.
upon a time, that was a really significant place. Yeah.
Yeah, I
So
did a nice little zip doc with CCTV in a class several years ago about Fort Washington. I don't know if it's on their site, but it's very nice. All about the history of that.
yeah. And then maybe just in the last minute, something
Yes,
here. I
we
just
only have
wanted
1
to
minute, right?
just wanted to mention, I had a sort of an artificial high yesterday of seeing that the COVID numbers for Cambridge, where there were zero new
Zero. Yeah, I
cases
saw that.
yesterday.
Yeah.
And I said, well, enjoy it while it lasts,
And
because
what happened today?
well, there were 218 today, but it was because
The
it
long
was
weekend.
the
Yeah.
long weekend, a lack of reporting. So I said,
Right.
that's not a real zero,
Right.
so sure enough, but the numbers are up, but hopefully I'm still trying to be optimistic about it. But we're not out of this. We're not out of the woods yet. I guess that's
Yeah,
all.
I got my
to say.
second booster last week.
I'm going to schedule mine pretty soon as well.
I got a Moderna instead of a Pfizer, and now I heard that Moderna is coming out with a new booster, maybe in the fall, that will encompass all of these other ones. So I guess I'll get my
All right.
whatever.
Well, anyway, on
Okay,
that
we gotta
optimistic note,
go.
we'll
Yeah,
see you
we'll
soon
see you
on
in a couple weeks.
Cambridge
Okay.
Inside Out.
Bye.